Today, I'll be talking about the most haunted places in the United States. After consulting with many paranormal investigators and enthusiasts on social media, I realised that this could quite easily be the top 100 places in the United States, so there will be plenty more of these episodes to come. The places listed here are in no particular order, so without further ado, grab a snack, dim the lights, and prepare for a feast of grim and grisly content. I'm your host, Severed Soul. For decades, stories of wandering spirits across the Gettysburg battlefield, local buildings and nearby woods have captivated visitors and residents alike. People claim to hear phantom footsteps, ghostly drumbeats, echoes of musket fire and cannon blasts. Many believe these encounters are the restless souls of soldiers reliving their final moments of violence and fear. Today, Gettysburg's history blends folklore, first-hand accounts and tragedy, solidifying its reputation as one of the most haunted places in the United States. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, marked a turning point in the Civil War and stands as one of the deadliest battles in American history. By the end of the conflict, over 50,000 soldiers had been killed, wounded, or reported missing. Nearly 1 million people visit Gettysburg each year, but they're not coming just for the sake of history. Many who visit this place are drawn in by the tales of lingering spirits that add a mysterious and chilling layer to this iconic Pennsylvanian town. Gettysburg was a pivotal clash between Union and Confederate forces. General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia faced off against General George Meade's Army of the Potomac in a brutal 3-day conflict. The battle ended with a decisive Union victory, halting Lee's invasion of the North and marking the beginning of the Confederacy's decline. However, victory came at an enormous cost. Soldiers lay where they fell, and graves lined the once peaceful, scenic landscape. The devastation was overwhelming. Gettysburg had become a scene of violence, loss, and suffering. One anonymous New Jersey soldier described the horrific scene. Burial parties were sent out, and those who could get away from their commands went out to view the scene of carnage, and surely it was a scene never to be forgotten. Up on the fields, like sheaves bound by the reaper, in crevices of the rocks, behind fences, trees, and buildings, in thickets where they had crept for safety, only to die in agony, by stream or wall or hedge, wherever the battle had raged, or their waking steps could carry them, lay the dead. The emotional and physical scars left behind in Gettysburg weren't felt only by those who survived. It's believed the sheer magnitude of suffering and death has left an imprint on the town that lingers to this day. There are various theories as to why Gettysburg is such a hub for alleged supernatural activity. According to Mark Nesbitt, a former National Park Service ranger and historian at Gettysburg, and author of several books on the region's ghosts, the battlefield may have been destined to be just that, a battlefield. Years before the Battle of Gettysburg, another battle, one even bigger, may have occurred about a mile from Big Round Top, at the southern peak of the battlefield, he says. Maps show that 2 Native American tribes had territories delineating through Adams County, suggesting it could have been a turf war between them. Emmanuel Bushman, a writer from Gettysburg, wrote in 1887 about many unnatural and supernatural sights and sounds experienced in the area of the Round Tops that he called the Indian Fields. Nesbitt, who also runs a ghost tour company in Gettysburg, mentions additional theories like the stone tape theory, which suggests that energy released at the moment of death becomes trapped in the area's abundant granite and quartz. While intriguing, these theories are speculative at best. There are those individuals like Jeff Belanger, an author and folklore researcher who has studied the history of Gettysburg, who simply accept the haunting presence as part of the region's history. Gettysburg is haunted because it should be haunted, he says. When you have tens of thousands of dead, missing or wounded in the span of 3 days, that leaves a stain that can never be washed away. Belanga points to the infamous words from President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. Brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. Ghosts are history, demanding to be remembered, says Belanga. Though the notion of a haunted battlefield may offend some who believe the definition of a ghost is some earthbound spirit doomed to never pass on, I think sometimes a ghost is a movie that plays over and over again, because we have yet to reconcile the lessons of the past. In his research, the first ghost story that Mark Nesbitt found specifically tied to the battle happened on the night of July 1st and into the early hours of July 2nd, 1863. During that night, as the Union Army's 5th Corps marched into Gettysburg, they spotted a mysterious horseman in the darkness ahead. Nesbitt explains, the figure would appear, then disappear, but it was obvious from their accounts he was wearing a uniform from the Revolutionary War. Many believed it was the ghost of George Washington. The battlefield is considered a hotspot for paranormal activity, particularly at Devil's Den, a rocky outcrop known for intense fighting. Confederate sharpshooters used the rocks for cover, resulting in many casualties. Visitors frequently report strange occurrences, cameras malfunction, mysterious figures appear in photographs, and some claim to hear distant gunfire and screams echoing through the rocks. I couldn't possibly talk about the ghosts of Gettysburg without mentioning the infamous Devil's Den, a notorious hotspot for ghostly activity. During the war, the rocks at Devil's Den became a slaughterhouse. Bodies were strewn across boulders and wedged into the tight crevices in between. Devil's Den was the location of more than 1,800 Confederate deaths and just over 800 Union deaths. After the hours of fighting at Devil's Den, some Confederate men were ordered to stand guard at the boulders that night. Many of them were unnerved by the eerie surroundings, the shared space between the living and the dead. The dead bodies at Devil's Den remained unburied for days, if not weeks. Some poor souls were never even buried at all, their bodies tossed between the boulders and forgotten about. The chaos at Devil's Den has led to numerous reports of hauntings that are still frequently spoken about to this day. Even the most skeptical visitors to the den won't deny that it holds some kind of otherworldly, perhaps supernatural, energy. One report dates back to the early 1970s, when a woman was taking photos at Devil's Den. She said she raised her camera to take a photo, when she felt the presence of someone standing directly behind her. As she turned around, she claims to have seen a barefoot, dishevelled man dressed in ragged clothing and long dirty hair, who reportedly said to the woman, "What you're looking for is over there," whilst pointing behind the woman. Naturally, the woman turned to see what the man was pointing at. When she turned back around to face him just seconds later, the man had completely disappeared. Confederate soldiers often wore their own clothes during the Civil War, since standard uniforms were not consistently issued. This lack of regulation led to a variety of attire on the battlefield, making their appearance less uniformed compared to the Union forces. Visitors report shadowy figures crossing the field, feelings of being touched, and an unsettling presence all around them. Similar phenomena have been reported at Little Round Top, where Colonel Joshua Chamberlain's 20th Maine Regiment secured a crucial Union victory. Many claim to see soldiers in uniform, hear musket fire, or encounter figures from the past who vanish without a trace. Just outside the battle lines, Hospital Woods served as a temporary field hospital. Mark Nesbitt recalled speaking to a woman who sensed 2 men approaching her in the woods. She later identified them as soldiers for the 42nd Mississippi Regiment, even providing their names and company details. Nesbitt later confirmed that these soldiers had been wounded nearby and treated at the same spot. To come up with two names, a unit number, and the fact these men were treated here is almost impossible, he remarked. Almost every old building in Gettysburg has its own haunted story, but a few places stand out, including the Jenny Wade house. 20-year-old Jenny Wade was the only civilian killed during the battle. She died after being struck by a stray bullet while baking bread in her sister's kitchen. Her death was an unfortunate, tragic accident, but it left a lasting mark on the house. Visitors and staff report doors that open and close on their own, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being watched. Some believe Jenny's spirit still lingers, trapped in the place where she met her untimely end. The Gettysburg College was used as a hospital and command post during the battle. One of the most famous tales involves two administrators who, while riding the elevator in Pennsylvania Hall, were transported to what seemed like a Civil War-era hospital scene. They claim to have witnessed wounded soldiers, blood-covered doctors, and frantic nurses. When the elevator doors closed and reopened, the haunting vision had completely disappeared, leaving them both startled and shaken by the experience. The Farnsworth House Inn, once a stronghold for the Confederate sharpshooters, is still marked by bullet holes from the battle. Spirits are said to linger here too, with guests reporting apparitions of soldiers, disembodied footsteps, and doors opening and closing on their own. Other haunted locations include Tilly Pierce House, the Daniel Lady Farm, and Sachs Covered Bridge. Gettysburg holds a special place in American history, a place where the past feels remarkably close. For those who visit these hallowed grounds, the stories of haunted houses, restless spirits, and strange encounters serve as reminders of the human cost of war and the lingering horrors that unfolded over 3 fateful days in 1863. If you're enjoying this episode so far, then please do me a huge favour by clicking on the like button and subscribing to the channel. This would be massively appreciated. Now, let's get back to the episode. Amid the Art Deco grandeur of the Queen Mary lies another, more sinister force that begs to be found. If you dare, that is. The Queen Mary, an ocean liner that was converted into a hotel and permanently docked in Long Beach, California, is as stately as they come. But don't let its luxurious appearance fool you. It also just happens to be the most haunted hotel in America, and the world's most haunted ship. While you ponder a stay in one of the 200 elegant guest rooms or suites, here's everything you need to know about the vessel's dark past and the ghosts who haunt its halls. The Queen Mary began its life as a cruise ship on the Cunard White Star Line. The vessel was christened on September 26, 1934 by Queen Mary herself, and it went on to log more than 3 decades ferrying both luxury and military passengers. During World War II, the ship was pressed into service to transport soldiers between the fronts. The liner was retired in 1967 and given over to the city of Long Beach. Just 5 years later, it reopened as a floating hotel, allowing guests to sleep among the original wood panelling and portholes and imagine what it would have been like to cross the Atlantic in style. With such a storied past though, not all memories made on this ship were happy ones. At least 49 deaths are said to have taken place on the Queen Mary since its maiden voyage, and accordingly, apparitions have been reported in several areas on board. These days, the hotel offers ghost tours by day and night to take full advantage of the spooky stories. According to Chris Wilmoth, the Director of Marketing at the Queen Mary, not only does the Queen Mary offer a transatlantic history, but it is known as one of the most haunted destinations in the whole of America. The unique history of the ship allows us to offer one-of-a-kind and authentic experiences that delve into the paranormal, from evening tours and ghost investigations to overnight stays in our most haunted stateroom, B340. This stateroom was a problem long before the Queen Mary opened as a hotel. In 1948, a British third-class passenger, Walter J. Adamson, passed away in the room under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Later, in 1966, a woman staying in the room claimed that she was woken up when the bed covers were pulled off her, and she saw a man standing at the foot of her bed. She screamed and rang for the steward, but within seconds the man had vanished into thin air. In the years since, numerous guests have reported hearing someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night and seeing bathroom lights mysteriously turn on and off on their own. Even the hotel's maids have made reports of bathroom water running when no one has stayed in the room for days, and on one occasion, of bed covers being pulled off within seconds of the bed having been made. The room has closed to guests for many years, but it has since reopened for anyone looking for an evening of creepy fun. Another of the notoriously haunted areas on the Queen Mary is the Mauritania Room. In 1989, two maids were sent to clean this lounge for a VIP reception. When they entered the room, they found a guest sitting silently on a chair in the middle of the dance floor. When a third woman came in to help with the cleaning, she remarked that the guest was staring, and she asked him to move. As the employees started to call security, the guest faded into thin air right in front of them, a feat all three women reported seeing at the same time. The Mayfair Room was once the ship's beauty salon, but now it's used as office space for hotel employees. In 2001, a member of the accounting staff came into work early, at 5:30 AM to be exact, and simply felt like something wasn't right about the situation. She went about her office tasks before sitting down at her desk, where she said she felt unusually cold. As she sat at her desk, she felt someone brush up against the back of her chair. Expecting someone to be behind her, she turned around to see who it was. To her horror, there was nobody there. Just minutes later, the woman saw a transparent figure dressed all in white walk across the room and pass straight through a solid door. Needless to say, the employee grabbed her keys and fled the room until her co-workers arrived. Another reportedly haunted area on board the Queen Mary is the first-class swimming pool. This now abandoned on-board pool was once the epitome of luxury, with an illuminated fountain, a mother-of-pearl ceiling, and elaborate mosaic tiles. The pool is no longer in use because of Californian code issues, but that doesn't stop it from being one of the hotbeds of paranormal activity on the ship. People have reported seeing a number of apparitions here. A young woman in a tennis skirt walking downstairs and disappearing behind a pillar. A woman in an old wedding gown next to the pool with a little boy in a suit. And a cloud of steam appearing out of nowhere, along with a little girl in a blue and white dress, who disappears in an instant. But by far the most famous ghost in the pool area is that of a little girl called Jackie. Jacqueline Torrey was 5 or 6 years old when she tragically drowned in the pool during an army crossing. Visitors have reported hearing the voice of a little girl calling out for her parents, and even responding to questions when prompted. Despite the area being drained of any water, splashing sounds and the wet footprints of a child have been reported in the area. Several people have reported seeing a little girl in the boiler room area, sometimes sucking her thumb, and sometimes with a doll in her hand. Whether or not this little girl is the spirit of Jackie remains unclear. Hatch Door 13, also known as Shaft Alley, was the site of a gruesome and tragic accident that saw a crewman crushed to death. One night in 1966, the watertight doors in the engine and boiler rooms were ordered to be closed. About 5 minutes later, an 18-year-old crew member from Yorkshire was found crushed in the door of hatch number 13, trapped with his arms pinned to his side. Although the man was freed, and carried to the hospital ward, it was too late. His arms, chest, and pelvis had all been crushed, and he was bleeding from the nose profusely. He was injected with morphine, but it was too late for the young man, who died shortly after. His ghost is regularly seen around the area now, with people reporting the sound of someone running behind them and whistling. Others have possibly made contact with the doomed crewmen, noticing spots of grease that look like fingerprints on their faces. Some have seen the ghostly apparition of a young man in blue overalls out of the corner of their eye. Several others have said they saw an engineer wandering the hallways, asking guests if they had seen his wrench, but when they went back to find him, he had disappeared. With the recorded deaths of 16 crew members and 41 passengers on board the Queen Mary, the question must be asked, is the Queen Mary cursed? Is it really haunted by all of those poor souls? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Perched in the secluded landscape of southeastern Pennsylvania, Penhurst Asylum stands as a haunting reminder of a dark chapter in the history of the mental health care industry. Originally known as the Gettysburg State School, and later renamed the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic, Penhurst Asylum is infamous for its controversial history and the ghostly tales that linger long after its closure. For nearly 8 decades, Penhurst witnessed a truly horrific degree of immense suffering and neglect, ultimately becoming a symbol of institutional failure and human rights abuses. In the early 1900s, Pennsylvania's need for specialised care facilities for individuals with mental and physical disabilities was growing rapidly. In response, the Pennsylvania legislature authorised the construction of a new institution in Spring City in 1903. The aim was to provide a safe haven for those deemed feeble-minded and epileptic, addressing the urgent need to house and care for over 4,000 individuals. The expansive Penhurst campus spanned a massive 634 acres and included over 30 buildings. Architect Philip H. Johnson designed the structures of terracotta, granite and red brick, connected by fireproof tunnels and walkways. The institution officially opened its doors on November 23, 1908, with the admission of patient number 1. Within just a few years, Penhurst became overcrowded, forced to admit not only those with disabilities, but also immigrants, orphans and criminals, due to the overcrowding of state prisons. By 1913, societal views on mental health were deeply flawed and often rooted in fear and prejudice. The state legislature deemed individuals with disabilities as unfit for citizenship, thus posing a potential threat to society. This led to the implementation of custodial care programs to segregate these individuals from the general population. Penhurst's chief physician, echoing the eugenicist Henry H. Goddard, infamously stated, "Every feeble-minded person is a potential criminal." Such a mindset resulted in the completely abhorrent and disturbing treatment of Penhurst's residents. Upon arrival, individuals were classified such as imbecile or insane and assigned menial tasks like shoemaking, farming, laundry and sewing. The institution's conditions were grim, to put it mildly, and the treatment of patients often entered the realms of being cruel and inhumane. The true extent of the atrocities at Penhurst came to light in 1968, when a local news station aired a 5-part investigation on the asylum. The investigation revealed shocking conditions, exposing the reality that residents were malnourished, restrained, and subjected to physical and emotional abuse. In 1981, Time magazine further highlighted Penhurst's history of understaffing, filth, and violence. By 1983, 9 employees were indicted for abusing patients, including those in wheelchairs, and forcing residents to fight each other. The Haldeman case in 1974 marked a turning point, This class action lawsuit filed on behalf of Penhurst residents argued that their rights had been violated. US District Court Judge Raymond J. Broderick's verdict confirmed the horrific conditions at Penhurst, noting overcrowding, understaffing, and a lack of essential care programs. He highlighted the use of seclusion rooms, physical restraints, and psychotropic drugs as measures to manage the inadequate staffing levels. The oppressive and abusive environment at Penhurst left a lasting imprint on the facility and its grounds. Today, the asylum is said to be a hotspot for paranormal activity, with investigators and ghost hunters seeking to connect with the restless spirits trapped within its walls. Staff and caretakers alike have frequently reported eerie occurrences, such as slamming doors, disembodied footsteps, and voices echoing through the empty corridors. One of the most frequently seen apparitions is that of a little girl, seemingly lost and confused, wandering the campus. The sounds of children playing and crying are commonly reported, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Most of the spirits are believed to be benign, seeking to communicate their stories to the living. However, there have been reports of more sinister activities, including alleged instances of satanic rituals on the property. After Penhurst closed its doors on December 9, 1987, the once bustling institution fell into a state of decay. Nature began to reclaim the buildings, with vines and roots intertwining through the structures as if trying to erase the memory of the horrors that occurred there. Inside, the hallways are filled with relics of the past, rusted wheelchairs, old laundry carts, and layers of graffiti. The emotional weight of Penhurst's history is palpable. The residual energy of suffering and neglect permeates the walls, floors, and ceilings. Today, Penhurst serves both as a haunted attraction and a sombre memorial to those who endured unimaginable hardships. It stands as a stark reminder of the past, urging us never to forget the lessons learned from such institutional failures. Penhurst Asylum's legacy is a testament to the need for compassion, understanding, and reform in the care of individuals with mental and physical disabilities. Its history serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of dehumanization and neglect. By acknowledging and remembering the injustices of Penhurst, society can strive to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. Visitors to Penhurst today can experience its haunted history firsthand, but it is crucial to approach it with respect for the lives affected by its dark past. The stories of the residents, their suffering, and their resilience continue to echo through the halls, reminding us of the importance of empathy and proper care for all individuals. Penhurst Asylum's story is one of tragedy, resilience, and the enduring human spirit. From its inception as a hopeful haven to its downfall as a site of horror and neglect, Penhurst's history is a poignant reflection of the broader issues in mental health care. The hauntings and unexplained activity reported at the site today serve as a chilling reminder of the lives lost and the injustices endured. That's all we have time for today, but stay tuned for more episodes of America's Most Haunted Places. If you haven't done so already, then please like the video and subscribe to the channel for a feast of grim and grisly content. As always, thanks for watching. I'm your host, Severed Soul.